best in motorsports entertainment, reach for Diamond P Video. From NHRA Championship drag racing to the world of outlaw sprint cars, Diamond P gives you the best seat in the house for motorsports. And with more than 20 spectacular titles to choose from, you can build a video library complete with drag racing milestones, in-depth video biographies, rare historic footage, and just plain fun on wheels. One title you won't want to miss is And They Walked Away. From 6 seasons of American Sports Cavalcade, Diamond P Video has selected 75 minutes of your favorite breathtaking incidents and combined them into a video that will awe even the most seasoned sports fan. And They Walked Away lets you relive the excitement as fearless competitors from all segments of motorsports push to the edge of disaster in their quest for victory. You'll experience the thrill when suddenly something goes wrong. A spin, a crash, a fire, someone crossing over the edge. Then you'll share the gut-wrenching excitement as help rushes in and you realize that miraculously the competitor has emerged unharmed. All this plus expert commentary by Brock Yates, Paul Page, and me, Steve Evans, make And They Walked Away a must for video entertainment, all for just $24.95. To order your copy of And They Walked Away or to receive a free Diamond P Video catalog, call 1-800-421-0725. From California, call 818-702-9723 or send a check or money order for $24.95 plus $3.50 shipping and handling to the address shown on your screen. Visa and MasterCard are accepted. CODs are not. Diamond P Video, the leader in motorsports video. The personalities.
Competition, that's for sure.
Finally having how this goes when
The machine. The performance. The risk. And the emotion. All combined to mark the 1980s as the next installment in Diamond P Sports' Decade of Thrills series. It's Decade of Thrills 2, the thunder of the 80s. Join us as we take an intimate look at the events that shaped the course of drag racing and defined America's understanding of all-out performance and excitement. Hello everyone, I'm Steve Evans, and for the next 90 minutes I'll be your host as we examine NHRA Championship drag racing in the decade of the 80s. Now, to describe the 80s as all-out racing excitement would actually be a bit of an understatement. Wouldn't you agree, Snake?
No question about it, Steve. Hello everyone, I'm Don Perdone. Once again joining Steve Evans to have a look at our Decade of Thrills through a driver's perspective. I'll examine how aerodynamics and horsepower and safety has affected the competition and the machines in drag racing.
So sit back, relax, and enjoy as Don and I take you through Decade of Thrills 2, the thunder of the 80s. We pick up our Decade of Thrills at the 1980 Gator Nationals. Kosti Ivanov, the green car on the far line, he thought he had problems until he saw what was happening to Len and Brockman.
And when he hit the guardrail, Steve, see that the fuel tank blew on the car, and boy, does that cause a fire.
And no doubt he had no brakes at this point, which is why he runs right into a finish line timing system light. Let him know, all things considered, they're actually a pretty lucky guy. He was not injured at all. The race car, it was a mess.
Sure was, Steve, but right away the car is out of shape when it left the starting line. Made a terrific right-hand turn, and boom, it hit that guardrail. Bingo, big-time fire.
That's about as hard as I've seen a funny car hit the rail in a long time.
Really. The car went into a tire shake, which is normal for funny cars. And generally, when you shift the car into high gear, the tire shake will stop. But apparently this one had its front wheels off the ground, and as I shifted it, that's all I can remember.
The following year, Leonard Brockman retired from active drag racing and now pursues a very successful career in motorsports public relations. Was that same Gator Nationals, Don Perdone, you had, well, the quickest ride of your career at that point. Your car was in the opposite lane, and it was flying to a new national record as Dale Foley was shut off in the semifinals.
And they had to shut Foley off, and I'm on a single, Steve, and that baby was running. It was screaming down the Gainesville track.
Congratulations.
This deal's getting pretty serious, isn't it?
You got a lot bigger smile this round than you did the last one.
Yeah, it's coming around. You know, we just got to run so damn hard to make it perform, but got to do whatever it takes, you know.
And it was 79 champ Raymond Beadle who had a great view of the rear of Don's Plymouth Arrow in the final round at Gainesville, the first of 2 victories in 1980. Lee Shepherd was at the wheel of a pro stock car at the 1980 Gators, as was this man, Bob Glidden. Little did we know at that time that this was to start one of the greatest rivalries in all of drag racing. The final round was Bob Glidden's Arrow versus Lee Shepherd's Camaro. Lee Shepherd was to win his second NHRA national championship than ever. Bob Glidden knew there was competition now. Moving on to the 1980 Cajun Nationals, Ted Cruz, Gary Beck, and Shirley Muldowney were number 1 and number 2 in top dual points coming to this race. But Beck took a commanding lead after beating Shirley in the semifinals with a much better reaction time.
Yes, and talking about reaction times, Beck just left her send in the gate. Beck's on a roll there, though, and Shirley ran quicker, but Beck's a winner, as you can see. And believe me, Shirley's not a happy camper at this moment.
Yeah, tell me, I had to interview her. Here we are, the 1980 Spring Nationals. Tim Gross in the near lane. Every time I see this, I still can't believe it. Tim Gross came out of that hale and hearty, not a scratch. Unbelievable.
And to walk away from it, or should I say run away from it, I can't believe it either.
The throttle was stuck wide open. Is there anything you'd have done differently here?
Absolutely not. There's nothing you can do. Once it hit the guardrail and it veered over to the right, the throttle was stuck on the car. Out of control.
Now watch the car as it rolls on the knife edge of the rail, right there. That's why NHRA is encouraging tracks, or demanding many tracks around the country, to put in concrete guardrails.
That's right, Steve. The concrete guardrail is about 10 to 12 inches wide, so when the car gets up on top of it and rolls on it, it doesn't have that tendency to cut it like that steel guardrail.
Tim's right leg actually came in contact with the top of that arm toe, and it cut through all 5 layers of his fire suit and didn't break the skin.
Lucky boy.
Well, I've seldom seen a driver. I've never seen a driver take that kind of a pounding in a funny car and come out as well as you have.
Well, I don't know if that deserves an award or not, but I would say that I could see that I was definitely in trouble. The throttle was stuck. I attempted to lift up the throttle. When it came around, I knew I was going to hit the guardrail. So I just tucked myself in as best as I could and tried to ride it out.
It's never easy when a racing partnership breaks up, but if the partners were also romantically involved, it can be absolutely brutal. That's kind of a lot of it.
I put a maximum effort on the starting line driving because it's strong, and I feel that I can drive as good as I think I can actually drive better than what she can.
He's kidding himself. He learned a lot by working with me, and I don't know. He's a pretty good driver.
You really concentrated on the tree this one, didn't you?
I couldn't lose this one, I'd never lived it down, really. Go back to Mount Clemens, Michigan, they disowned me.
When Shirley met Connie at the 80s Springs, there was a lot more than points and prize money at stake. Bob Glidden was beginning to wonder how long he was going to keep that number 1 on the side of his race car, because Lee Shepherd had won 4 events in a row. But in Columbus, the Glidden fans could relax for a change. Bob defeated Lee Shepherd in that far lane.
Here are the players in the greatest single-season rivalry in the history of drag racing, especially in pro stock, Lee Shepherd and Bob Glidden. You guys have raced each other every major event this year. What's the score? How many have you won?
We won 5 so far.
And that leaves you with? Only 2. You know, I've seen you guys at the head of the lanes just like this quite a few times this year. You're usually kidding each other, joking around. You're deadly serious today.
This is a very important race for both of us. Lee and his guys don't want to lose the lead, and we very much want to gain the lead.
But it was Glidden in the near lane, losing the U.S. Nationals with a rare red light, and really putting the pressure on himself as the tour moved to Ontario Motor Speedway in Southern California.
And how much we miss this place, Steve. The greatest facility in the world for drag racing. Boy, did we love this place.
And they called tearing something like that down progress. Well, I'll tell you one driver who this wasn't his favorite venue. Watch Dave Uehara.
Yeah, I'm sure he doesn't miss it, Steve. Bad accident. Car got out of shape. Davey Uehara, great driver, great car, got out of shape, hit the guardrail, and as you can see, just tore it to bits. But fortunately, he walked away from this just fine, unscathed, no problem. Davey will long remember this accident.
I don't think I've seen one take more of a damage to the rear section of the car. Just blew the tires and wheels off it.
Steve had hit that concrete guardrail and exploded at the time, but you know, the car didn't go over it. Like the Tim Gross accident. As you can see, it held the car on the course. It did hit the guardrail, terrible damage to the car, but the car stayed on the course. That's what that guardrail is supposed to do, keep the car on the course.
All right, coming into 1980 Ontario in Top Fuel, 4 drivers came to the race with a chance of winning the title. Jeb Allen was second in points but failed to qualify. Marvin Graham was taken out by Shirley Muldowney, number 3 in points in round 1. And Gary Beck, the points leader, was defeated in round 2 by Gary Cornwall. But Shirley had to at least win in the semifinals to take the title. Her opponent would be Cornwall. Talk about pressure, Snake.
All kinds of pressure. If she wins, she's got it. Beck's at the other end biting his nails, and he can see her coming down the course. She wins.
And I'll never forget at the other end, Don, Gary Beck, his wife, Penny, they had a bottle of champagne, hoping that they would win the title. They'd celebrate. They passed it to Muldowney.
Oh, God, Steve, I want to.
Nobody's in. Look who's here. Gary and Penny Beck. Shirley Muldowney just puts them in the number 2 spot. But they kissed her, and Gary told me earlier, he said, you know, she deserves this. She won more races than any of us this year. And he's got a bottle of champagne for Shirley Muldowney from Gary Beck. Unbelievable.
And Shirley, first person to win the Top Fuel Championship twice. And how about Gary Beck enter that bottle of champagne? Raymond Beadle, the Blue Max, he already had the championship wrapped up at the Ontario there. I'll long remember that one.
And Bob and Etta Glidden celebrated as Bob not only won the race, he set low ET, top speed, and drove around Lee Shepherd in the points to retain number 1 in Pro Stock. Our 81 highlights begin with the Gator Nationals. And for lovers of great big speeds and itty-bitty ETs, this was a fantasy race come true. But for Pro Stock driver Larry Pettinel, it was more like a nightmare. That one pushed the engine right back in his lap. The real star of qualifying, and maybe the entire event in many ways, was Jeb Allen.
We won the race here last year and recorded the quickest time we ever ran on one of the best racetracks in the world, I think. You know, we run 5:62 quicker than anybody has ever done. And so that tells the story right there about the track conditions.
This was a special race for you too, Dr. Dunn.
It sure was. Come back and run a 5:92 and lower my own record. Not bad, Steve.
And you drove a speed record too.
Out here in Florida at Gainesville, this track's tremendous. It's just a tremendous traction, and the air is good here.
2 names dominated Pro Stock racing at the Cajun Nationals, Bob Glidden and Lee Shepherd. And in 1981, they faced each other in the semifinals. Glidden, with a big advantage off the starting line, went on to win the event. Only those 2 won in a 5-year span.
He had a little more misfortune for a change. I think maybe he had a problem on the starting line. And the only shot we really had of winning the race was to leave the starting line first. And finally, it happened in my favor.
And then came the 81 Spring Nationals.
Well, the car was a little bit lean, and it started going over the hill, as we say, and I drove a little farther, just a split second, and then I saw fire in the fire windows, and naturally it just shut it off then, and I had already released the parachute, but it didn't seem to make any effect. It must have had a lot of fire behind the car, and it burned it off as soon as it came out. Well, the next thing I did is shut the fuel shut off, which is also a normal instinctive thing, and then reached over and set the fire bottles off. And then it was going backwards, and I couldn't see where I was. I thought I was going off the track sideways, but I was still going down the track, and it went over, up back onto the track and into the hay bales, and then it came to a stop.
You look okay, except for maybe a little wound on the nose there.
Oh, yeah, that's not bad at all. I just got a little plastic on my nose when the shield melted a little bit.
The safety equipment definitely works.
Oh, yeah, you can see it does. By looking at these gloves even, I don't even remember my hands being hot.
And now you know why Dale Armstrong became a crew chief.
That's right, a very successful one, as you know, on the Kitty Bernstein team.
Unbelievably, Armstrong was back on Sunday for round number 1, where he met up with Kenny Bernstein, who eventually, later in the decade, would pay him over $300,000 a year to rent his car.
Back at Indy, 1981, my favorite race, the U.S. Nationals.
I think it's everybody's favorite event, Don, except in 81, maybe Shirley Muldowney wasn't having a real good time. She thinks that she got some bad parts that led to 3 complete engine explosions. And although she won in round 1 here, you can see big problems still.
My category, Raymond Beadle in the Blue Max set the speed record, 249 miles an hour.
Car left hard that time, and it moved hard through the middle, so and it run good on the top end, didn't lay over, and we didn't hurt it, so we knew we made a good run.
Well, the Bulldozers were top eliminator at Ontario, so in 1981, the Winston Finals moved to Orange County International Raceway. In the near lane, Bob Wooden saw his hopes of winning the championship evaporate in this loss to Mark Ewell. Lee Shepherd won the 1981 Pro Stock World title. Funny car qualifying on Friday at the finals was more like a volcano eruption, and the inferno began with Gary Densham.
Yes, and it looked more like the 4th of July, Steve, but it wasn't. It was just on a Friday afternoon in qualifying, and Ditcham had a big-time fire.
The fire at one point is like a wave going over the top of the automobile.
It sure is, Steve. The car's engulfed in fire, and Ditcham at this point is just trying to get out.
But the firewall and interior 10 did its job. He was unhurt. Along came Billy Meyer, same day, same place.
Same problem. Burned pistons, big fire again. We saw more fires that weekend, Steve, I believe, than any time in the history of the sport.
Oh, absolutely. At this point, you can tell you can't see Meyer. That means he couldn't see out of the car. But again, he was okay after a little oxygen. And Snake, you went for a ride yourself, buddy.
Yeah, I'm on stage next here. Boy, she left the line good. I thought I was on a tremendous run, and all of a sudden, the lights went out. I had a bad one. I believe mine was worse than all of them, as you can see.
Scare you?
Scared me to death, Steve. At that point in time is when I really started thinking about top fuel drags.
The cameraman that shot this footage, Don, retired after this day. He said he just couldn't take any more scenes like that one.
I almost did, too.
But thanks to the work of the safety safari, you were okay, as were all of the participants in those fires. Now, we asked drivers, stupidly probably, what goes through your mind?
My life at this time and point, when it's on fire like that, you're thinking about your own safety, obviously. You want to get out of it. It's hot, it's burning, it's the last place you want to be.
Are you kidding? I didn't even like standing down there. The 1981 Winston Finals was to be Dale Armstrong's last race as a driver, but he had some fun in his retirement effort. He set a brand new national record.
Not a bad way to go out, setting a national record, 589. Big time number at them days, Steve.
Oh, absolutely. Wouldn't even get you in the show now. Boy, you talk about a battle in top fuel. Gary Beck and Jeb Allen came into the Winston Finals with Allen in the points lead, but he went out round one, and he and his wife Cindy were forced to watch the rest of the scenario. Gary Beck, in the near lane, had to win the event, set low ET, and top speed of the event. If he did all those things, he would garner enough points to knock Jeb Allen out of the bonus of the championship. The white Salisbury in the far lane, we have ignition on Salisbury. Gary Beck wins the race. Jeb Allen is listening to the PA. Beck sets low ET, but misses top speed by 2 miles an hour. Jeb Allen was the 1981 Winston champ in top fuel.
Hey, Gary Beck, first car into the 550 bracket. Big number.
Our look at 1982 begins with the Gator Nationals in Gainesville, Florida, when Raymond Beadle in the Blue Max tried to join the Blue Angels. And believe it or not, for the fans, the best was yet to come. Beadle's impression of lucky.
Here's what happened, Steve. Nolan Beadle, car left the starting line, and he's a great driver, but it got away from him. I think they were a little overconfident that weekend. Car got loose, got sideways, got upside down, and made a slow roll.
Hurt my feelings worse than anything else.
What happened? We couldn't tell from where I was.
The car went out and it shook a little bit, and it had like a slow drift, and I thought I could bring it around, and it just dug in on the one side, and when it did, it just flipped it. There's nothing I could do. I got to say it was my fault. I stayed with it a little longer. You know, we was trying so hard to win that round. We've slid around before and had no problem, but like I said, it just dug in.
The 82 Gators found a shining new face in the winner's circle, Canadian Frank Hawley, who would go on to win the 82 Winston title.
Well, the money went to where it was needed the most in this particular final.
Boy, I'll tell you, and it's about time.
Okay, a happy Frank Hawley, as you can see. Our congratulations to Austin Coyle and Pat Minnick and all the gang from Chicago, Illinois, the Chi-Town Hustler.
Don, has there ever been a better top fuel rivalry than the man, Don Garlits, and Shirley Muldowney?
Never.
Rate Don Garlits as a driver, starting line driver.
Off and on. I've seen him exceptionally good, and then I've seen him where I couldn't believe. I thought he was really late. But, we're all guilty of that one time or another, but I would call him marginal.
Big Daddy marginal?
Well, that's what she said, and she's the one that had the racing. It was Shirley Muldowney of the Deer Lake and the 82 Gators. The fans of Florida Man on their feet, but they would be disappointed if the title went to Mount Clemens, Michigan. Shirley Muldowney just one notch in her gun on the way to the 82 Winston Championship.
And boy, Steve, she's not afraid to get a little bit of controversy. Ask Lucille Lee.
Oh, boy, what memories we have of the 82 Spring Nationals. Lucille Lee earned her way to a final round berth against Shirley Muldowney, and the fur flew. Shirley was hot when Lucille got a single in round 2 because Jeb Allen didn't show.
3 motors in the hole right now. At $20,000 a whack. I could borrow one from another racer, but when I had to go race them, would I blow up their motor, or what would I do, go borrow somebody else's motor at that point in time? So right now, I just feel it's the best time to throw in the towel.
I don't like it. No one else likes it. No, you should have enough faith in your car, your driver, and your ability to go out and run for the money, like the boys do, and that's what we've always done until this year. So I don't know.
There's a lot of conversation that Jeb Allen, in that he was using your engine, was being used to block for Lucille Lee, and that the car is not really broken, and he is pulled out to give Lucille a single and more points.
Well, Steve, the best way I know to put this, and it makes us look bad now, but 3 days ago when Jeb's sitting over there on his tailgate, he has no motors, he's broken, he's out of money. Nobody else in the place would help the boy.
And in the semis, Gary Beck racing Lucille Lee. Gary's off to a great start. Lucille smoked the tires. Beck had the race won. Shoot game over. Lucille's luck continued.
Well, it looks like Mark Dennis and the crew have a lot more work to do because you had to stay with it this time. They can't criticize you for winning the race and staying on the motor.
Oh, that was great.
Well, here we go. The moment a lot of people have been waiting for, an all-girl final.
Yeah, I'd like another shot at that.
That's just what she said.
I'll bet.
You think the lady in pink was seeing red when Jeb Allen didn't race Lucille? When they took the broken motor out of Jeb's car and put it in Lucille's, she was on the moon.
Have you seen what's going on down the road here?
I know exactly what's going on. They are taking the motor out of Jeb's car, right? The motor that would not run the round he had to race Lucille, and they're putting it in Lucille's car. So it's another bye.
There's an awful lot of people that are helping out down there. Is it?
Are the people that got beat? They have nothing to do with their time, so they are over there. It's a good place for them.
They enjoy being part of that thrash, or do they want to see Shirley Muldowney lose? I can't believe that.
Well, I'm sure they want to see me lose.
And she wrote down every last name. In the final round, though, Shirley Muldowney just punted Lucille Lee right out of the park.
And I'm glad my name wasn't on that list, Steve.
Well, in the heat of battle, everybody reacts differently. When it was all said and done, though, Shirley Muldowney couldn't have been more great.
Lucille has a long ways to go, but I think she is a credit. I like her. She's a nice lady, and she should be able to do her own thing. I think she'd be better off.
Ah, those were the days, Snake.
The sweet days.
Moving on to Indy 1982, Joe Amato found out that nitro isn't quite as forgiving as alcohol. Of course, he went on to have a tremendous career in the category.
Yeah, this looks like a grenade. I don't know. It's made a lot of noise. It sounded expensive.
I've never heard it quite put like that. Sounds expensive. It is expensive. And I believe he's going to hear that same expensive sound here in a minute, Steve. Losing the blower again in round 1. Went through a lot of problems, Amato, getting started.
And Joe's weren't the only ears that were ringing. Here against Gottula to near lane. Kaboom for Billy Williams. The parachute burns off instantly. Williams thinks, oh no, not the blower and the race car too. Watch this fancy bit of driving.
He's trying to save the car though, Steve. He's trying to keep further damage from the car by not getting into the catch net.
At Indy 82, Gary Beck was a headline maker. The blue car was in near lane. The first to run under 5.50 seconds, or 5:48 to be exact.
We know the thing is, real car's been real strong the last 3 weeks, and I'm real glad for Larry Minor to have a great running car like this.
But the boldest headline of them all was reserved for Don the Snake Prudhomme. In the far lane, Prudhomme, with the record sitting at 5:73, runs 5:63.
If I was back home and I heard what's going on here, I wouldn't believe it, but I'm driving the car. and I'm here to tell you the car's doing it. It's an incredible racetrack. It always has been here, and you know, I ran a 73 and come back with a 63.
You're about to see the crash that never ends as we revisit the 1983 Gator Nationals. A young Florida Supergas driver by the name of Mickey Thompson felt his car get a little bit sideways. So he corrected it and got a little more sideways, and then it began.
You don't have to be a Raymond Beetle in a Blue Max funny car to do this. You can do it in one of these too, Steve.
Oh, very easily done. The car was completely destroyed, but Mickey Thompson, we saw him the following year in '84 with a brand new piece. Watch Tom Anderson in the far lane.
And Kenny was on a run, and Tom knew he had to run good. He gave it everything, but lo and behold, fire time. Watch how long it takes to get the car stopped, Steve. That's the important part. The fire came out, and he got that chute. The chute's trailing behind the car, won't stop it. So now he's just on his rear brakes only, and he wants out of that baby.
He did a great job of driving, Don, but not such a good job of getting out.
That was a rough one.
That's one of the hottest fires I've seen in a long time. Are you okay, first of all?
I think so. I might have some blisters on the back of my neck. I'm okay. Just couldn't get it stopped, you know? I mean, I had the brakes all the way back. They won't stop when they get the tires burned off.
Well, unfortunately, Anderson wasn't the only one to flick his dick. In the far lane, it was John Force racing Mike Dunn. Fourth red light, but he doesn't know it. He never saw the Christmas tree. He just stays with the throttle.
And he could have shut it off, Steve, and he had a fire at the same time. And watch the driving job he does. That Force, tremendous driver. He wants to get that car stopped, get it off to the side of the track as quick as he possibly can, and get out of it.
You know, I see drivers at the other end. It takes them a minute just to get unbuckled. When they're on fire, they can do it in about 2 seconds.
But you don't want to take the seatbelts off before you come to a stop, Steve.
John, you okay?
Fine, Steve.
Again, the safety equipment. What would you do without it?
Save my butt. What could you do?
It's true what they say. Speed doesn't win drag races. But if you run the fastest speed ever recorded, as Shirley Muldowney did, it can sure make you smile.
You have just become the fastest drag racer in history.
Wow, a lot of years we waited for this one. They were happy. Shook a little bit, and it's a clean motor.
83 Cajun Nationals, bizarre top fuel final. Larry Minor versus Gary Beck, and Minor owns both race cars.
It's an interesting concept, really. I mean, with the car I'm driving, we're after the World Championship, so I got to go for the win. I need the points to cover up. We're not always going to have our day, you know. We're going to have to suffer through the ones where we get beat too.
Well, you own both cars, and you won a world title for him as bad as anything.
That's right, Steve. Well, you know, who knows? I know I can't beat Gary Beck. He's still flat out driving. Everybody says, well, you know, what if it comes down to it? But, you know, I'm going to race the car. You know, I'm a tenth to 2/10 slower than him. But, you know, we're not going to throw the race, but I'm going to just give it the best shot I can.
But what neither man considered was that Gary Beck might break, and Larry Minor might not be able to slow down. Larry Minor, the reluctant champion.
As Beck said, that trophy will look just as good on your mantle as it does on him.
I guess I can get one.
All right, you've seen some smoke. You've seen some fire. You ain't seen nothing yet. Car driver, huh?
Big fire, fast car, short track, catch net. Big trouble. Mike Dunn, worst fire we've seen in a long time. I've seen this footage 100 times, and I still can't believe it.
Mike Dunn, you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
One of the worst accidents I've ever seen at this end of the racetrack.
Wasn't that bad.
He looked it from here. I think when you see the tape, you'll believe it. The net definitely prevented what could have been an awful bad situation.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. Throttle hung wide open, and reached for the fuel shot and blew up and backfired and everything else. So.
Everything went wrong that could go wrong, really.
Yeah. I was pulling as hard as I could to get that throttle back, and something got hung up somewhere.
I'll let you get up to your crew. They're concerned as we are.
1983 U.S. Nationals. For the second year in a row, Shirley Muldowney's luck on this racetrack was, well, absolutely rotten. There's an explosion, a tire gets cut down, and Shirley's in the wall.
lost a left front tire, picked the back of the car up. She's real lucky right now.
But it was the last thing she needed, considering that she was in a very tight Winston points race with Gary Beck, and the car suffered some severe damage when it got into the guardrail. Shirley Muldowney, again, was okay. World-class driving.
Lucky. Thank you.
Shirley. The car was rebuilt by Ron Tobler and the crew, but Shirley went out in round number 2 on the Labor Day Monday final eliminations. Now the big hometown crowd, all of the Hoosiers were hoping that their own lion would roar in pro stock competition, and he did. Bob Glidden won yet another U.S. Nationals title, and that tied him with Lee Shepherd for 4 event victories at this point in '83. But Shepherd had the points lead. He had won 4 rounds during the season. So when the Winston Finals rolled around at OCIR back in California, Lee Shepherd was smiling. He had his second Pro Stock Winston Championship neatly tucked away. But for Mike Dunn, well, nothing was easy for him, Don Prudhomme, on this day.
Hey, when you say nothing, you're absolutely right. He couldn't do anything right on this particular day. Bad fire. There it comes. Now watch the engine, Steve. Comes out of the car, upside down. Have you ever seen anything like this in your entire life?
Who would have thought Mike Dunn could top Columbus?
Well, he sure did on this one.
And it rung his bell a little bit. He kept telling the paramedic, 1.
Well, Steve, you don't see that very often. It blew the crankshaft right out of the bottom of the engine. As you can see, completely destroyed the engine.
A lot of drivers can, in their whole career, not suffer one incident. You've had 2 this year. What does it tell you?
I'm the luckiest unlucky guy in the world, I guess. But the one before, that was a cakewalk compared to this one.
Unluckiest lucky guy. I love that line. 1983, Gary Beck won the Winston Championship, and he continued to be the king of the ETs. You're looking at the then record 5.39 second elapsed time. What a power Gary Beck was throughout that entire season. And Frank Hawley won the funny car title in the unsponsored Butts Down Chi-Town Hustler. And who could know, when Shirley Muldowney won the Winston event title at Orange County, it would be her last win until '89. Blowing the body off of a funny car is usually a disaster. But at the '84 Gator Nationals, Don Prudhomme, may have been the best thing that could have happened to driver Ron Corrente.
Yes, you're right, Steve. But the fire's still burning pretty good, but as you can see, it's starting to taper down just a little bit here. It didn't have that body to contend with melting fiberglass.
Exactly. Nothing burns like oil-soaked fiberglass funny car bodies. Corrente was just fine, not even singed. Remember that great Top Fuel final from the Gators we showed you back in 1981? Shirley Muldowney versus Big Daddy Don Garlits. Well, Garlits, after a 2-year absence, returned in '84.
I really shouldn't be out here. I'm 52 years old and I really don't have the parts, but here it is. It's all set. It's like they wrote it in Hollywood and brought it here and produced it.
I think it's good he's back. I think his fans appreciate it, and it adds to the class. So I think it's good.
Don't let that 52-year-old man fool you. Yeah, Shirley was on a great run there, but you can see something failed in her car. Of course, Garlits went on for the win.
And the crowd went bonkers in Gainesville. The '84 Gators was interesting from another perspective. A lot of new performance enhancements. The first computer we found on Gary Beck's car. Boy, this has become an indispensable tool, Don Prudhomme.
It sure has. It's really changed the sport around, and Beck was the first to have it. How about the Amato wing, the setback on the rear wing?
Oh, yeah, it was so high up in the air. When he unloaded it and mounted the wing, he got a lot of teasing, but not when he became the first driver to top 260 miles per hour with the wing up in what Joe called the clean air.
Remember me, Steve? I was the guy that bet that a funny car would be the first one to run 260. Bet Shirley Muldowney $500, and I paid out.
It's been 10 years since the last speed plateau was reached in Top Fuel racing. Don Garlits at 250 miles an hour. Now, Joe Amato, 260.
Oh, but that just goes to the credit of my wizard crew chief, Tim Richards. You know, he finally gave me some beef to go with the burger.
And Joe wasn't done yet in the final round against Gary Beck. Keep your eye on that car in the near lane as he set a new national speed record at 262.39 miles per hour. The next race, everybody had a tall wing. Amato had really started something. And Kenny Bernstein, you know, Don, you almost didn't have to pay off that bet with Shirley Muldowney because you thought a funny car would run 260 first because of what? Aerodynamics?
That's right, Steve. The aero on the cars was tremendous. We learned a lot about aerodynamics in those days. And Kenny Bernstein, he was in a wind tunnel with his car. And the two of us, Kenny and myself, we thought 260 was on the board for a funny car first.
Well, you missed it by about an hour and a half because in the final round, Kenny Bernstein, near lane, opposite John Collins, 260.11 miles per hour in a funny car.
And she wouldn't give me my 500 back.
Don, in almost 20 years, including 4 Winston Championship seasons, you logged a lot of seat time in a Nitro Funny car, much like this one at McCullough's.
Boy, I sure have, Steve. But you know, one of the things that I'm grateful for that didn't happen to me was a terrible accident that Ed McCullough and John Collins had side by side back in '84 at Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Thank the Lord that 2 car crashes in this sport of drag racing are an extreme rarity.
We've seen some bad ones. That's a bad one, Steve, especially when 2 drivers are involved. And Collins was broadsided. He didn't even know what happened. McCullough knew he was out of shape, I'm sure.
The only thing that could have made this incident any worse had it happened at higher speed.
McCullough's car immediately went into tire shake, and I believe he lost vision. And at that time, it was too late. He was already across the track into Collins' lane, and I don't have to tell you what happened there. They both collided, and pieces went everywhere.
And here's an incredible moment when the fuel tank is shredded on the guardrail post, and the other driver slides through that fire. What must have been going through their minds?
It actually sheared the whole front of the car off, catching the fuel tank at all. Boy, you don't see him like this every day.
And the grinding sensation for John Collins as he slides upside down in his virtually totaled race car.
Notice the fuel pouring out of Collins' car. Luckily, that didn't ignite.
They were both dazed, shaken, damn glad to be alive. Ed, how long does it take to get a Baton Rouge incident behind you mentally?
Well, Steve, you know, that's probably something that I will never forget. It's just like, you know, they say you get bucked off of a horse, you got to get on and you get going again. It's the same thing, but believe me, when it comes time, right after an incident like that, it comes time to get back in the car, you think about it a lot. But once you get a run or two under your belt, you know, you forget about it. I don't like to talk about it. I don't like to see it on tape, but it happened. I'm over it.
Steve, that's the attitude you have to have.
Well, by the 1984 Cajun Nationals, the Shirley Muldowney-Connie Kalitta rivalry was still smoldering just a bit. Shirley did not qualify as well as Kalitta did, but was confident in her car.
Well, Shirley, your guys are trying a new engine combination. You've kind of been sneaking up on it in qualifying a little bit, haven't you?
That's exactly what we were doing. We didn't want to get ahead of ourselves, and we're trying the new Sid Waterman injector. We feel that is the way to go. We know that's the way to go. It's just going to take a little time to work it out, and that's how Gary Beck did so well last year, because he tried new things. He was willing to do that.
Okay, round number 1. The testing is over. We've got a race now.
That's right. We're not afraid of the competition. That's for sure.
Connie has a brand new car, stepped up, ran very, very well.
Yes, he did. He had a good day yesterday. Let's see if he repeats. Usually he doesn't.
And in this case, she was right, Don.
Yeah, she loves to get those little digs in. You notice right at the end, and Kalitta had trouble. Couldn't get the car out of reverse, and crew was working on it frantically. And Rod Tobler can see this going on. He sent it Shirley to the starting line.
And Buster Couch, the starter, looked on as long as he felt he dared. Worried about Shirley getting too much heat when Kalitta got it out of reverse. Shirley left the starting line, and Conrad was furious. A big break at that event for Shirley. Had Kalitta not had problems, he probably would have taken her measure. She had big trouble herself.
And did she ever. Look at the oil and fire pouring out of the car at the finish line.
Meanwhile, back at the starting line, a furious Connie Kalitta appealed the decision to the judge, Buster Couch. Appeal denied.
And that's a man you don't want mad at you, the starter.
Well, cooler heads prevailed, and the fight might have been better than the race, if you know those two. And for the second year in a row, the top fuel final came down to Larry Minor and Gary Beck. Minor owning both cars, wanting Beck to have the points. I talked with Larry.
You're going to do it again, aren't you? You're going to go beat him again here.
Well, you know, the guys like to see the car run, and, you know, we're all racers, and we're going out there to run the car. And Well, there's a little bit of wagering going on back and forth. So, we had a final with Gary and I a week ago at Bakersfield, and Gary barely got by me then, and we'll see what happens this weekend.
Well, between superchargers and ground-up funny cars, you probably spent about $100,000 this weekend. What fun.
We don't want to talk about that. My dad might be watching this.
Larry Miner owns the Edmund funny car in both of these dragsters that met in the final round, and it was Gary back wire to wire, even though the boss tried to make a race out of it. You bet. 84 Spring Nationals top fuel qualifying Connie Coletta.
Brand new car, and for some reason the chute didn't open on the car. This is no Mike Dunn incident, but he did get into the net, hurt the car just a little.
But he took the net head on, and that's the way NHRA anyway says you're supposed to do it. Rather than trying to avoid the net, get him bouncing on those big tires and maybe flip him upside down. Connie Coletta was fine, and the car wasn't that badly hurt either. Just another tangle with the net at Columbus. In round number 2, Gary Ormsby from California met up with Shirley Muldowney. And of course, nobody would know it at the time, but this would be Shirley Muldowney's last run in competition until 1986. It was at the Grand Nationals in Montreal, June of '84, that Shirley suffered a devastating crash. Massive injuries were involved in a crash at over 245 miles per hour on a qualifying run. A front tire came off the wheel, wrapped up in the steering, causing the car to turn hard left. Nothing Shirley could do. Notice the engine in the upper right of your screen. Shirley was terribly hurt. The 3-time Winston champion suffering badly mangled legs and feet in the crash.
It was a sad moment for drag racing. I was back in California at the time, Steve, and we heard the news over the phone. We didn't know if she was going to make it. They said it was that serious at the time.
And a very long recovery period was to follow. 1984, U.S. Nationals. After a 4-year absence, the return of Big Daddy Don Garlits. No one was more thrilled about it than fellow competitor Connie Coletta.
Garlits did awful good. I'm really surprised to see him come back here. Not sure going to be fun to race him. It's a shame we don't have Shirley to race here because it makes it a whole bunch of fun to race against her. But Gar's back, and I hope he stays.
Well, we came here with the intention of winning the race. Of course, anything can happen in a race, but I mean, we wasn't here just for the beer.
And if he was, Big Daddy would be the one recycling the cans. He flat waded through this field. First to feel his sting was Shannon Stewart in round number 1. Then in round number 2, it was Howard Haig's turn to find out why they call him Big Daddy. In the semifinals, tougher competition, Larry Miner. But nobody was tough enough for Big Daddy in '84 at Indy. Then the final against Connie Coletta.
And boy, was it a final. Coletta was running real good, but Big Daddy pulled it off.
I had a wonderful weekend, and I've enjoyed myself tremendously. It's been great to be back.
And it was good to have you back, Big Daddy.
Oh, yeah, it was at that point that he got the fever again. And the stars were apparently out of line again for Larry Miner and Gary Beck, the 2 teammates. You know by now who's supposed to win, but it doesn't happen that way. Larry Miner beats Beck. That gave the Winston Top Fuel title to Joe Amato.
Well, you've had a wonderful year, and you wear the World Championship beautifully.
Yeah, we're looking forward to the next race now, I guess. We're glad to be the world champion. Tim Richards really came up with all the good power whenever we needed it, and he was good enough to overcome some really bad track conditions, and we're glad to have a world championship.
In qualifying, John Prudhomme, a nice guy named Phil Hobbs had a really bad idea.
Yeah, no rear wing for a starter. Couldn't plant the back of the car down. For some reason, he thought he could get away with that, but as you can see, he didn't.
This is one of the strangest rides I've ever seen a driver make. First of all, he's on the wrong side of the guardrail at this point.
Yes, and chopping the car up all along, as you can see, it's just tearing bits and pieces off the car. But fortunately, in that cage that's constructed, NHRA has supervised through the years, he gets away with it, comes out unscathed.
Well, it's just a wonder the way it got into the wall nose first, time after time, that he didn't suffer almost Shirley Muldowney-like injuries. He's a lucky guy. Now, my friend Don Prudhomme had run that incredible 563 with his funny car, but Don, you couldn't make the required 1% backup run. Mark Oswald got the record officially.
Yeah, he sure did, and we sure wish we'd have backed up our 563 run, and we knew that Oswald was capable of running somewhere in those numbers, too. And sure enough, he jumps up and runs a 569, new national record.
coupled with a speed of 260 miles an hour. At the time, the most impressive funny car run yet. And it was that kind of performance that carried Mark Oswald on to the Winston Finals in his first ever funny car championship, beating out Billy Meyer and Kenny Bernstein. Oswald on top in '84. And Lee Shepherd. Well, at the Winston Finals, Shepherd won his 4th consecutive Pro Stock title. He had to get past Joe Lapone in round number 1 to claim that honor.
Your Pro Stock World Champion for the 4th time, Lee Shepherd. Lee, you were back in the staging lanes. You saw Warren Johnson lose. What went through your mind then?
Well, I knew we had to win the first round, and that can be a tall order sometimes. It was a pretty close race, raced Joe Lapone, but we got him, so I'm real happy about it.
The year, 1985. The track, the LA County Fairplex, Pomona, California, the Winter Nationals, and it found a reborn Don Garlits. But in a race just 2 weeks prior, Don Prudhomme, Garlits had this happen in Phoenix, Arizona.
He sure did, Steve, and I was there. I was down at the end of the course watching him come down through there. Broke a rear wing support. Bad thing to do in Top Fuel.
Well, I wasn't there, but I heard about it, gathered up a camera, and headed straight for Phoenix to get the story behind the accident. And what I found was just vintage Don Garlits, the thrash, literally whipping the thing back into shape.
Car seems to be handling nice. It's not the car I had in Phoenix, but it's okay.
Big Daddy going into round number 2.
And there he faced Joe Amato.
But still a pretty good car. Garlits off real good, but something went away in his car. And of course, Amato went through the win. But Amato had big problems at the other end. Lost a supercharger.
The 85 Winter National saw John Lombardo under the skin of the Blue Mac, not Raymond Beadle.
The pressures of business, is that why you've retired?
Yeah, that's primarily it. You know, I have the Grand National team and then a sprint car team with Sammy Swindell, and I haven't been that involved with my other racing, and I want to be, and I'm getting more and more involved with my other businesses.
Thanks for all the thrills over the years, Raymond. There's been many of them.
Thank you, Steve.
About that same time, I took a trip to Mount Clemens, Michigan to check on the progress of 3-time champ Shirley Muldowney.
When the surgeons are done and the therapists are done, what then, Shirley? Can you look ahead that far?
I'm trying to. I have hopes and dreams, and I'm a pusher, and I would like to drive the race car again. That's what I really want to do, but I'd like to be able to do it and feel comfortable. I'm not too sure that's going to happen for me, but we'll know here in a few months.
A Top Fuel dragster again?
Oh yes, that's where my love is, in Top Fuel, and that's what I want to be. I want to drive the king of the sport.
And drive she would. What happened in the funny car final to Al Segrini? Snake, he won it, but with this.
Blew a clutch out of the car. And that's titanium sparks you see there, Steve. Lost the clutch completely.
Between the Winter Nationals and the Gator Nationals, the sport of drag racing suffered an irreplaceable loss. Lee Shepherd was killed in a testing accident in Texas, and at the Gator Nationals, the qualifiers in Pro Stock lined up in a missing man formation. The pole left open for this man, Lee Shepherd. The 16th annual Gator Nationals occurred in 1985, and Don Prudhomme, what makes this race so special? It's always just kind of great.
You're right, it's a special place. It's that time of year, it's nice and cool, conditions are perfect for drag racing.
And you make an awful lot of power, which sometimes can bite you. Bob Gottschalk in the near lane is a good example. Boy, this was a ride, Don.
Boy, was it ever. I was there for that one. Right off into the forest. You ever see anything like that, Steve?
No, runaway, flaming chainsaw.
Well, Bob Gottschalk, boy, is it good to see you back at the racetrack. How are you?
I'm fine. I suffered some burns on my hands and on the tops of my feet, but other than that, I'm fine shape.
Well, in Pro Stock qualifying, fine shape would not be how you would describe Harold Denton in the party time car. Maybe out of shape.
It made a perfect straight run, and just as it got through the finish line, it felt to me like maybe the right rear tire went down. The chute came out, but it would never recover. It began to get a little crossways, and I got it back 2 or 3 times, and then next thing I knew, it was going around.
Best thing that happened for Harold was getting off in the dirt where those great big rear tires couldn't dig in like they will on pavement and flipping in for ends like that kid Mickey Thompson. Don, can you tell by watching if a run might be really good, like a record? Kenny Bernstein here, 564?
Absolutely, Steve. The car was really hooked up, carrying the front end. Buddy, he was on one.
Yeah, you can tell in that first 60 feet, generally, if a run has any potential. Kenny Bernstein into the record books at the 85 Gators. At the 85 Cajuns, Gary Ormsby, the veteran, ran up against the rookie, the kid from Miami, Darrell Gwynn, who had just moved into the Nitro ranks after having won the 83 Top Alcohol Dragster World Championship. Ormsby crossed the center line, and the kid had his first ever win light.
We know that we weren't going to win races right off the bat. We're still at a learning stage right now, but we'll take them as we can get them. I'll tell you, we don't plan on winning these first couple races, but anything can happen.
Could you see Gary Ormsby? He was having big trouble across the center line.
Yeah, I saw him right next to me. Yep, we were all having troubles. It's anybody's race once you get in the field, though.
At the 85 Spring National, Chevrolet fans were delighted to see the Rear-End Morrison Camaro that Lee Shepherd drove to the 83 championship reappear with Bruce Allen behind the wheel, and in his initial effort with the team, he made it all the way to the finals.
Car owners Rear-End Morrison know what the winner's circle feels like in those final round appearances, but congratulations, Bruce Allen, on your first Pro Stock final round.
Thank you. It's going to be hard. Be a tough one. Or be there.
I just hoped I was up to the challenge, interviewing Bruce Allen. All right, on to Indianapolis, 1985, the biggest event of the year, and as always, Snake, it was something to behold.
You bet. U.S. Nationals. Everybody gives it everything they got at this one. Bill Mullins went a little bit too far on this one. Started throwing parts off the engine. Didn't really lift in time. Stayed with it really too long, trying to get everything out of it.
After having won the 85 Springs, he was hoping for a better effort at Indy. And there was a very special treat for all of us. Shirley Muldowney and Ron Tober made the trip to the U.S. Nationals. Shirley still recovering, of course, from her injuries, but when she smelled the nitro, you could see it in her eyes. She'd be back. And she, as much as all of us, loved watching a new Top Fuel rivalry develop. That man, Darrell Gwynn, Miami, Florida, and that man, Don Garlits, Ocala, Florida.
This is a pivotal race in this World Championship Series. I want to win this thing. It's very important to me.
Does this take any pressure off at all, as far as you're concerned?
No, there's more pressure now than ever. I got to beat that kid. And that kid, you know, we call him the Wolf, and he's hungry.
The Wolf. Great name for him, up big.
And in the final round, Don Garlits got out the blunderbuss and went wolf hunting. Went left right with him, but he was never really in the fight from that point on. Garlits driving to a daylight victory, but Glenn was pretty philosophical about his loss.
We don't have the experience that Don's got.
Nobody does.
That's true. But we're happy just to be here with the experience we've got of less than 6 to 8 months. I've got to thank everybody that's been a part of this race car because it has been motivating.
The Wolf's Day would come. To Don Garlits, the Winston Finals was a beautiful, sunny Sunday afternoon. He owned the Top Fuel Championship yet again, and the crowd loved him for it. Same event. Gary Bett met up with Gary Ormsby in the Top Fuel final round. Now, Gary Bett won, but not because Ormsby wasn't willing to sacrifice parts and pieces. They don't get a whole lot more violent than this one done.
They sure don't, Steve. He giving it everything he got. Too lean. Blew the blower off and blew the rods out of it. But boy, they were trying to win, but Beck was just way too tough.
Now, if you can't tell me about this next race, this next pair of cars, nobody in the world can.
That's right, Steve. We were running really well, and I was pretty sure the following year I wouldn't be back. But I wanted that speed record. And boy, we got it, 264 miles an hour.
And the Winston Finals title as well.
You were the first to break 250. That meant a lot to you. Does this record mean as much?
Well, it all means a lot to me, you know, especially at this point in your career, you know, when you've done so much, come back and run real good is really a gratifying feeling.
And a gratifying feeling for Kenny Bernstein and crew chief Dale Armstrong as they won their first NHRA Winston Funny Car title, clinching it at Pomona. Bob Glidden, well, it's been quite a while, in fact 4 years since he had worn the number one. He earned it in 1985 along with the help of his wife Etta. The 86 season got off to a furious start at the Winter Nationals in Pomona, especially for Ron Correnti in the far lane in his brand new funny car. Much like John Collins back in Baton Rouge in the incident with McCullough, Correnti had absolutely no idea that Dave Uehara had a stuck throttle and was going to try to drive right in his tailpipe.
Oh, that's a bad one. The throttle apparently was stuck, and he just couldn't do anything about it. Got out of shape, got behind the car with a stuck throttle. Bad shape to be in.
And then very alertly down towards the end, Davey kind of dirt-tracked it to a stop with both the tires smoking. He was okay. His first concern was Ron Correnti. He also was uninjured.
It sure was. The throttle apparently stuck on the car after he got over in the other lane. Real bad accident. This one could have been big-time serious.
And neither driver had any blame for the other. They were just both relieved to have all their body parts still attached. All right, now you want to see a brave man in a funny car. You watch Ed McCullough in the near lane, because that Oldsmobile is going to do something just flat awful.
It sure did, Steve. He blew the whole supercharger off the car, threw the rods out of it, lost half the body. And here we go. The car suddenly blew up on him. Ace had no idea what was going on at that time. The lights went out. I talked to him right after this one. Boy, he was shaken up real good. Lost the car. Front half of the car is still attached, as you can see. Best thing that happened in the accident is he lost the back half of the car, kept the fire off of him.
But the fire still nibbling away at his gloved hands. She was back. The lady in pain, Shirley Muldowney. After all the pain, all of the intense therapy, Shirley Muldowney came to Phoenix, Arizona 1 week before the Winter Nationals to test her brand new pink racer. Look at her face. It said it all.
Collecting her thoughts now, Steve, getting her helmet on, getting set for the car for her very first run down the quarter mile after that tremendous accident. The car left the starting line just fine for her, and she's just getting the feel of the controls again, getting used to being back in the saddle.
And back at Pomona, who should she meet in round one? Of course, Big Daddy.
If she knocks me out in this first round, it'll almost be like just granting her the world championship for 1985. What can you say, right?
I don't mind racing Big Daddy, and I don't think he minds racing me.
You wouldn't prefer another dog?
No, the way we look at it is we try to get rid of the good ones and then go on from there, but it's going to be an awfully good race.
The kids left the concession stands for this one, Snake.
That's right, Steve. You could have heard a pin drop back in the pit area. Everybody was on their feet watching this one.
Boy, Shirley was right in there until the engine expired. Don Garlits went on to round number 2 and passed. But when he got to the semis, there was that man he referred to as the Wolf, hungrier than ever.
And the Wolf was running real good. This is the first time that the Wolf actually put away Big Daddy in fine style, I might add.
You're thrilled, aren't you?
Yes, I am. I can't even hardly talk. I tell you,
And I'm not going to make you. We'll see you down here in just a short time. You might win this whole thing.
Thank you very much.
He did indeed, dropping another veteran, Connie Coletta, in the final round. Don Prudhomme, 1986, the Gator Nationals. A new car was debuted by the man from Ocala they called Big Daddy. What did you think of it when you first laid eyes on it?
I thought it was the greatest race car I had ever seen. I mean, there was so much thought that went into this car, completely different than anybody else's. Developed his own front wheels in the car, completely enclosed the cars, an aerodynamic cockpit on the car. This car was destined to go fast.
And that is Swamp Rat 30. Now, you know, it may have been unique and it may have been beautiful, but it sure was fast. Don Garlits became the first driver ever to top 270 miles per hour. He did it at the 86 Gators, and he told me, Don, his intent here was to punch a hole in the wind and drive through.
And boy, he did that. Look at it go.
That was a run against Dan Pastorini, 270 miles per hour.
In spite of the little tires, they fell off every time. It's laying on the ground.
Well, I heard you say to your crew, I'm not going to try the 270. That's over with for this race. There it was.
Well, it's just running good. You know, you can't hardly help yourself. You basically tune, and we were taking nitro out of it. It's just that it's so slick.
The concept obviously works.
Yes, it's the design of the future. There's no question about it. We'll have the tire thing fixed. We've already got tires. We got some little airplane tires that's going to do the job just nice.
And they did, as a matter of fact. So Big Daddy, debuting Swamp Rat 30, won the Gator Nationals in his home state. Dick LaHaye was hoping for victory, but instead got a great big parts bill. In a sport of milliseconds like NHRA Championship drag racing, everyone is vulnerable, even a great champion like Bob Glidden. Glidden in the far lane, Butch Leal near lane, the 1986 Southern Nationals. One can only imagine the terror that Etta Glidden experienced on the starting line, watching her man go through that agonizing crash.
And this was the first time that Bob Glidden had a funny car style roll cage in his car. Really helped him.
In my opinion, it saved his life, no question.
I don't know what happened. I felt the back of the car come up and it went over and I just put my arms around my head and I was just in there riding along.
And then he got the hug of the century. Remember the cat's net we saw Connie Coletta hit with his dragster at the end of National Trail Raceway, Columbus, Ohio? Well, in '86 at the Spring Nationals, the nets were replaced with a gravel pit to stop errant race cars. Now, the first to test the effectiveness was Australian funny car pilot Gary Phillips. He just had way too much momentum and did a little high-speed roto-tilling in farmer Herb White's front yard.
Well, if you're going to crash, that's the way to do it. You want to go head first, engine into it first, get the momentum of the weight in there.
And other than the fact that he wasn't injured, it was not a good eye for Aussie Gary Phillips. And Gary is not totally depressed. You see, he didn't own the car. Moving on in '86 to the Summer Nationals, where there was action in all three of the pro categories. First in the spotlight was Bob Glidden. Anybody that thought that Atlanta crash got him down was dead wrong. He came back in New Jersey with an identical car, and here in round one lowers the national record to a 7:44 second elapsed time. Funny cars were having their problems, Snake, especially Scott Coletta in the far lane up against Kenny Bernstein.
Yeah, he sure was, Steve, and he's off. And guess what? Boom! He blew the body and all off it. Another funny car fire. Blew the supercharger off it, rods out of it, but he's coming to a safe halt.
What does that cost?
$30,000?
$30,000?
Body, supercharger, motor.
That he was okay. Now, all of that pales in comparison to what you're about to see. Don Garlits in the near lane. Swamp Rat 30, the first car over 270. One of the first to ever put completely over backwards. Now watch this. Nobody at the starting line knew if Don was conscious or not. When the car headed back up the track, they scattered.
The throttle was actually stuck, Steve, and finally he got the engine shut off, or it could have came all the way back to the starting line.
And Snake, the frontal aerodynamics thought to be so neat at Gainesville may have contributed to this flip over backwards deal.
I agree, Steve. Not enough downforce on the front end, and the car actually flew.
And even Garlits said, take a look at this. So once it gets at that attitude, it's like a big spoon.
That's right, Steve. Once it gets that high in the air, it gets underneath it. There's no saving it.
But if there's one thing that kind of salved the experience, Big Daddy knew he had just been really spectacular. Big Daddy, you okay?
I'm just fine. My feelings is hurt is all.
And the world's quickest and fastest dragster took a bad hit too.
Yeah, it turned over backwards.
You've had some harrowing experiences, but that was an unusual one.
It was very unusual. It, it just, I knew it was gone. It got so high and then it wouldn't come back. I backed out of it early, but it didn't make any difference. It was accelerating too hard, and even though the throttle was off and everything, it didn't make any difference. It caught wind underneath it.
Any chance of repairing this car?
No, this car can't race at this event. I'm not that crazy.
I disagree with that statement, actually. I think he might be if he thought he could have saved it. And now, Texas Motorplex, 1986, the Chief Nationals. The racetrack was in many ways the stars. The first of the stadium-style drag strips. The Pro Stock Final, it was late in the day. Warren Johnson red-lighted. Bob Glidden won his 50th career victory. Bob and Etta Glidden have won their 50th NHRA Pro Stock title. How do you feel, babe?
Great!
Yeah, more important than that, some points towards a world title, huh?
Yes, we feel really fortunate to be in this position right now after the year we've had.
Well, crash and all, Bob Glidden went on to win the 1986 Winston Pro Stock Championship, a year he'll never forget. Kenny Bernstein won his second consecutive Winston Funny Car Championship, thanks to much new technology developed by his crew chief, Dale Armstrong. And Big Daddy Don Garlits, blow over or not, won the 1986 Winston Top Fuel title, his second consecutive. The only man to ever do it back-to-back. '87 Winter Nationals, Pomona, California. Tim Morgan, far lane. His machine judge, the most beautiful entered. Just before receiving the award, the machine got some battle scars.
Yeah, sometimes beauty doesn't play a part in the sport, though, Steve. No matter how nice it looks, it still has to work right.
And just when it looked like it had righted itself upside down and kind of like a slut car started running along the wall.
Yeah, it doesn't take a lot to get a car like this out of shape, and once you do, it's really hard to save it. It just goes over.
Well, other than having his bell rung just a little bit, Tim Morgan was okay. In fact, the car wasn't all that badly damaged in the race later on in the year. Now, were you a little bit surprised when Kenny Bernstein came out with a record-setting 5:48?
Boy, was I ever. You know, they were on a roll all that year, though. Bernstein could do no wrong. He had this car, and the car worked tremendously well. Dale Armstrong, all the crew did a great job on it.
Dale Armstrong and crew, you did it again.
And a new body shape.
Oh, absolutely. The Buick completely disfiguration that no one's seen before in our sport. It's different. A lot of Can-Am stuff here, GTP stuff maybe, but the downforce, Gary Wheeler and Dale Armstrong just did a super job on the downforce.
And the drag racing press dubbed that funny car the Batmobile for its strange shape. On to the Gator Nationals, Gerald Gwynn now in Bernstein colors grabs the top fuel record, 5.22 seconds. This is the quickest of them all, 5:22, Daryl Gwynn.
I can't believe it. I'll tell you what, when I left the starting line, I just knew it was flying. I'll tell you, in front of my hometown people, this is the greatest. I don't know how I could get any better than this.
It did. Gerald got beat by Joe Amato in the Top Fuel final. Here's Billy Meyer with a new expression on blower explosions. As soon as you touch the throttle, and he did more than one on that day.
It's obvious that there's only about one thing that could be wrong at that point, and that is ignition in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Well, let's hope you find it.
I hope so, too.
It can get mighty expensive mighty quick when you can't figure out what's doing it.
But Don, you and your crew had a much nicer day than Billy Meyer and his guys did. After a year's vacation, only your second race back, you put the beautiful new Pontiac funny car into the winner's circle. I'll long remember our conversation at the other end. Is it like riding a bicycle? You took a year off, you still feel as comfortable as you did?
Yeah, I really do. Actually, I feel just fine, you know, the year's rest. I think everybody needs that once or twice maybe in their career. And yeah, I just got to, you know, run a little bit harder. But yeah, we're pretty pleased with it.
Is there more there?
I think so, yeah.
Don, that conversation took place right after you had beaten Kenny Bernstein in the semis. This was the finals.
And to be in the finals, I was on cloud nine, Steve. What a great, great thrill of my life. With the people that stuck behind me, my crew, everybody, to win the Gators, it was great.
It was great for all of us who have followed your wonderful career that has included 4 Winston championships and maybe another one in the future. Well, Billy Meyer had not found his problem by the '87 Southern Nationals in Atlanta, Georgia. Here he was up against John Force. You'll see what I mean. Now watch it drive. Meyer was a Texas State go-kart champion when he was about 15, and you can see he still has the skill.
Well, he put that to good use.
The 1987 Cajun Nationals saw the debut of what was to become another intense rivalry among the top fuelers. Joe Amato and this man, Dick LaHaye. They were to battle all through the season for the Winston Top Fuel Championship.
Dick LaHaye's been working hard all year, joined the Larry Minor team, and he stood a shot at that title now.
The best he ever had. And Joe Amato found out that as well. It was Dick LaHaye up the cages by a matter of inches.
The cars are so bunched together with Darrell and Joe and Garlitz and myself, and I've moved ahead of Garlitz into number 3 spot, and, you know, it's going to be a heck of a season. We're not even halfway through it yet.
Well, Dick LaHaye didn't stay in the 3rd spot in points very long. Spring Nationals, Columbus, Ohio. It is LaHaye in the winner's circle over Gary Ormsby. Crew chief daughter Kim and her brother Jeff exchange palms on the starting line after that one. 87 Summer Nationals, LaHaye, Deer Lane, really helps his points cause by setting a new national record, 5.17 seconds elapsed time. That's worth 200 bonus points. The fans love Familia LaHaye in Englishtown, New Jersey. But it was Joe Amato, record or not, who kept the points lead by winning the final from a tire-smoking Dick LaHaye. The feud was on and would continue for the rest of the year. After the Summer Nationals, Don repaired Swamp Rat 30 and announced it would be donated to the Smithsonian Institution. Don Prudhomme, you should have been there that night. Big litter off in D.C.
only Big could do something like that.
I tell you, there were some paralyzed tourists walking by the Smithsonian. And, of course, he built a brand new car, Swamp Rat 31.
A little more streamlined in the front, a little different concept on the nose piece, canopy, and basically just a nice replacement car.
Well, 30 will be long remembered.
It'll all remember it a long time, you can bet on that.
When Don Garlitz rolled to the starting line for the 87 North Star Nationals against old nemesis Darrell West, he couldn't know that this was probably going to be his last run in NHRA competition. It was Gwen winning on that day, Garlitz heading off on the match race tour that he does so much of, and this was Spokane, Washington.
Yes, Steve, 1 week later, same thing in Englishtown, carrying the front end down in the lights, but this time it was much more serious.
At a much higher speed.
This happened to be his last ride also in the Top Fuel Dragster.
Well, we think it'll be, but you never know with Don. He suffered some broken ribs and that one was in pain for quite a while, but has made a complete recovery. Here's a weird deal, Don. Watch the near lane.
As bad as that looks, as bad as it sounds, it's a good thing he threw the body off the car because it didn't keep burning and burning on top of him.
And it didn't hurt the body nearly as badly as it did the engine, so that was one thing he didn't have to fix anyway.
His face tells it all.
Oh, boy. The drivers themselves were starting to call this the Dick and Joe Show. The final 87 U.S. Nationals, Joe Amato versus Dick LaHaye. Amato became the first driver ever to clock 280 miles per hour at this event, kept his slim points lead with this very close victory. Wife Jerry, Tim Richards, and the crew enjoying the moment.
Tim told me it was going to be real tight, he said, but you're going to have to weld them to the tree. You know, we've been driving real good all day, and I've been just concentrating a real lot on the tree. And I've been getting real good lights, and, you know, I've gotten my eyes picked out the last race, so I came here with the idea that I know I was going to have to do real good, and thank God they gave me enough power to do it.
Don, as we look at the new Top Fuel dragster of Kenny Bernstein, it's interesting to compare your and his career. You're both moving to Top Fuel dragsters in the 90s. You both won 4 Winston Funny Car titles.
That's right, Steve. And we both decided to get out of it, too. Because I can remember back in '87 when Kenny Bernstein had a tremendous fire. You know, he was going for another world championship. He didn't think nobody could stop him, matter of fact. And lo and behold, he had a tremendous fire back at the Keystone.
That's right. That was in 1987. He wasn't as invincible as maybe we thought.
That's right, Steve. I'm sitting right behind him in my funny car watching him, and he started throwing something out the left side of the car, blew the engine up, and of course it was engulfed in fire. He was completely out of control, didn't have any idea where he was at. This one really rung his bell.
The competition thought so long, Kenny, for this race. They were wrong. The car was back, ready to race. You know, with the success you've enjoyed this year, 7 victories, the World Championship will again be yours. Was there any temptation to just throw the wreckage in the truck and take a week to come back?
No, there really wasn't. In fact, it was never even discussed. When Dale went down and looked at the car in the swamp and thought it looked pretty good, let's go fix it, let's come back and do some battle, and that's the way we operate.
And it's that kind of drive that has made this team the success it is, I guess.
It really is. It takes that, and the guys are just great, and all the friends that helped us, and Carl Ruth and Gwynn's and everybody else, but that's what it takes.
A lot of people have been up all night.
A lot of people up all night, and a lot of friends praying for us. We appreciate it, too.
The Winston Finals, Pomona saw the final act for 87 in the Joe and Dick Show. It came down to Joe Amato and Dick LaHaye for the Winston Championship. A season-long battle. It might have well been done in one race, Snake.
What a way to end up the championship. Pomona, California, last round.
And I talked to both the crew chiefs before they did battle. Kim, your feelings, the World Championship on the line.
Well, we're just going to try to run the best that we can, and hopefully it won't smoke the tires. And whatever the outcome is, we're real happy with the year.
This is definitely the biggest run of our career, Joe and mine and everybody else here, and it's real important to stay consistent on this track. The track seems to be going away a little bit, but we've got to go for it.
They met in the semifinals. The Winston Championship on the line in this one side-by-side race. A brilliant start. Amato possibly overpowering the racetrack. LaHaye wins it at 5.19 seconds.
That's over 20 years of hard work right there, Steve. I love it.
On a cool, gray weekend in February 1988, the NHRA again transformed the LA County Fairplex into a drag strip to host the traditional season opener, the Winter Nationals.
And Dick LaHaye and Joe Amato picked up right where they left off.
It was those two in the final round, and LaHaye looked very strong here in Pomona. But later on in the season, even though he won this one, he faded to finish 1988 fifth in the points. Eddie Hill, Don, was a guy who rolled into the Gator Nationals with something to prove that he could run with the best.
Boy, that's the truth, Steve. He was running tremendous. You know, his car was set up a little bit different from a lot of the guys. He was utilizing that lock-up clutch a lot better than the rest of the guys, believe me, and the numbers show it.
And he had the right fuel system. He got that developed to the quickest run ever.
The quickest man in the history of drag racing at 5:06.
Ah!
06.
06. That's a new national record.
Weight backs it up.
That's right.
Faster and quicker than anybody's ever gone.
Ever.
All in the same race. I can't believe it.
Kenny Bernstein was in a record-setting mood. Here in the semifinals, he reset his own national lap time record on his way to a fourth consecutive Winston Running Car Championship crown.
Kenny, are you ready? A 5:31.
Oh, my goodness me. That's phenomenal. I never would have thought that could happen. It's come so far, so fast in the last couple of years.
And down at the Cajun Nationals, you saw a guy that in the old days you matched race with all the time. You never thought he was really a contender.
Not at all, Steve. Bruce Larson was a guy that we match raced with around the country. Never really thought he stood a shot at the title until he joined up with Joe Amato, that is.
That's right, and this was the Cajun Nationals when Bruce Larson won the event, putting away the ever-dominant Bernstein. There's no prouder moment for a driver like Bruce Larson to win on driving ability. A whole shot has done it. You've won your first one. How do you feel?
It's just beautiful. You know, it's a lifetime devoted to trying to get here, and we're going to stay here.
Well, as we look at National Trail Raceway again, the 88 Spring Nationals, I'll bet you viewers are figuring out there's a pattern to this place. We always go down to the far end with good reason, Snake.
Yes, Steve, that's James Goodson's pro stock, and he's into the sand traps. But fortunately, it's there for him. It slowed him up just fine.
And the next visitor was John Noble.
Yeah, no shoot, sand traps.
When the pro stocks start going into the pit, you know that it's short. Now here is R.C. Sherman.
And that's why the sand trap's there. They all stop safely.
Well, here was a funny car race that scared us. Ron Dudley was alongside you, Don Prudhomme.
Yeah, and I remember this run quite well, Steve. You know, I got through the quarter mile just fine, but lo and behold, behind me, there was a tremendous fire going on. And when I got on my car and looked back at this accident, I was really, really frightened for the man.
The body stayed on the car, which, as we've said before, sometimes isn't the best thing that can happen. There was just an incredible inferno that just continued to grow and overcame Ron Dudley before he could get the car stopped.
Yeah, that's the kind of fire you don't want to be in. It's one thing when you blow the body off the car, get rid of that, but when it stays on the car and you can't get the driver out, there's problems.
Dudley unconscious. They raised him out of the car into a helicopter. He was diagnosed with some pretty serious burns on his back, but he has since made a complete recovery. And here in the final round of the very same race, the Spring Nationals, John Force in the near lane up against Bruce Larson. And John Force won his first ever televised NHRA national event. His earlier victory was at Montreal, and we weren't there, and he's never forgiven us.
It's really amazing. Driving these race cars is something, and I did the dry, and Coyle looked in and said, "We're in trouble, buddy, and all that's left is the dashboard. Can you believe planning on a dashboard to win a race?" And I flipped a few buttons, and that old heap worked. I can't believe it.
Yeah, Steve, I remember this one, too. It was a good one. Boy, the air was cool and clean in Seattle. Car left really strong. I knew it was on a good one. Boy, we're looking for that record, too. We wanted that 5.30.
Ticket of death. Anytime you run like that, you know, it's very, very hard. And it wasn't a perfect run either. The car shook a little bit and so on out there. So see if we can straighten out a little better.
And you took the record away from Kenny Bernstein, who had this problem at the 88 North Star Nationals. They couldn't get the car into reverse.
That's right, Steve. Those things happen. The clutch was probably swelled up at the time after his burnout. They worked every way possible, rocking it back and forth. And then his foot hit the throttle accidentally, ran over one of his crew members, and boy, that was it. It was over. He had enough.
Well, actually, 3 of his guys went down, Don, and your team becomes as close to you as your family. Bernstein was heartsick about this deal, but the crew, nobody was injured. They came up with T-shirts for the next race that said Kenny Bernstein with a tire track across their chests. All right, usually at the U.S. Nationals, we swelter in the late summer Indiana sun. Not 1988. It was jacket time and fire suit time for one particular driver from Southern California, Brad Tuttle, and he had a real kahoomer. And Don, there was no fire, really.
That's right, Steve. The concussion was so great, it actually just blew the body in a million pieces.
That was unbelievable. Also unbelievable was Joe Amato coming back to IRP to win his second U.S. Nationals title, back-to-back. Amato went on to become the 88 Winston Top Fuel champ. How did Bob Glidden fare in his home track? Well, what does that smile tell you? He won his 9th U.S. Nationals, 4th consecutive, and also would go on to win the Winston Crown in his category. 1988, the Super Nationals, history about to be made by one Edward Hill of Wichita Falls, Texas. The bright yellow car up against Joe Amato. And due to weather, the lights were on at the newest of the super tracks, Houston Raceway Park. Amato far lane. It was Eddie Hill in the near lane. Eddie Hill simply outclasses Amato to a 4.93, the quickest run in history.
We knew the track was going to be good, but not that good.
Oh my, what a celebration ensued. Fuzzy Carter, the crew chief, went absolutely crazy, as did Ursi when she greeted her man at the other end. 4.93. The 1989 Winter Nationals, the season-opening gathering of the clan, saw the drag racing world poised for speeds over 290 and many EPs under 5 seconds. You know, Don, I have been around motorsports as an observer as long as you have been a competitor, and I still find the long, slippery, sexy Top Fuel racer as exciting a race car as there is on this planet.
You know, I agree with you, Steve. But you know, you really got to talk to the people that own this baby, Eddie and Ursi Hill. They went through a tremendous accident in '89 at the Winter Nationals.
And the crowd was really anticipating a number from the Texan after that 4.93 and 88 at Houston. What they got was this. An oh my God, upside down backwards flip. Eddie Hill was okay. And Don, as we look at this again in slow motion, there's absolutely no doubt as to what caused this.
That's right, Steve. It lost a front wing. In other words, the front wing slipped back and the car took off just like a plane would do. It was completely out of control. There was absolutely nothing he could do with it.
So that front coil is supposed to provide downforce. Instead, it was just the opposite.
That front wing is as important as the rear to keep the car stable on the ground.
Just a spectacular incident in the life of Eddie Hill. And as it flew, it just peeled like a banana.
It sure does. All the pieces come off the car, Steve. It just flies apart. Those are magnesium body panels. They're the first thing that goes.
I talked to Eddie in the on-track hospital.
You feeling okay?
Yeah, I don't think I got hurt at all. Banged my knees just the tiniest little bit, and I got a little pain right here, but I'm looking awful good.
So many pieces of these race cars are your best friends, Don Prudhomme, and that parachute has got to be one of them, as John Force found out in round 1 at Pomona. When your best friend turns on you, you're in trouble.
That's right, Steve. And as he's approaching the quarter mile, he's thinking everything's okay until he tried to open the chute. No chute. The handle apparently slipped in the car, a chute malfunction, and into the sand pits he goes.
It looked for a second like maybe he thought he'd try to swerve and avoid it and thought, nope, let's take her head off, and he turned turtle.
I said, put her in the sand, but I never thought she had dug in. That baby dipped on me, hooked the nose, and what a ride.
Your family's down here, John. Let them know you're okay.
I'm okay.
He enjoyed it. Absolutely. That's John Force. What do you expect? Well, another man had a moment he'll never forget, but this time on the positive side. Connie Coletta, near lane, the first to top 290 miles per hour.
He must have thought he was in his Learjet.
Oh, man, what a pass that was.
290.
To be the first is magic. Now, in the funny car final, we maybe didn't know it at the time, but the man in the far lane, Bruce Larson, was throwing down the gauntlet to Bernstein. You're not going to win 5 Winston titles in a row. That would break the tie between you and my friend the Snake.
That's right, and believe me, we all knew all about Bruce Larson. He was on a roll.
Oh, absolutely. Bernstein smoked the tires even though he had a whole shot off the mark. All right, now we move on to the 1989 Cajun Nationals, and if you've got small children, you might want to hide their eyes on this one. Look at the near lane. Oh, that is R.C. Sherman. And when it was all over, that was still R.C. Sherman. He did not get hurt in that accident.
Couldn't keep the car out of the left guardrail. And then once it hit the left guardrail, then it was out of control. And I remembered, the last thing I remember was seeing the right guardrail coming. When I look out of the windshield, I saw the right guardrail coming straight at me, and I knew I was flying. And I said, this isn't going to be pretty. And then I don't remember a thing after that until they were trying to get me out of the car.
Brave men these are. Well, if you've been watching this entire show, you know the location already. Columbus, Ohio, Spring Nationals 89. Grady Bryant, alcohol funny car. A 1.5 with a twist.
There's not too many options there, Steve. It's either go across the street or go into the sand pits.
Grady Bryant was okay, and the car even repairable. Just had to put a new front half on the chassis. Well, the beautiful Red Rocks could only mean one location. The all-new for 1989 Vandermeer Speedway. Some $4.5 million pumped into this facility to make it one of the finest in the sport. And Don, you were in the far lane against Don Gay Jr. We were both a little too close to this incident.
We sure were. And this one I'll long remember. And so will Don Gay Jr. The car bounced off the guardrail. I could see him out the corner of my eye that he was in trouble. But I didn't think it was that big a deal, Steve. I pulled it out the end of the course, and by the time I got out of my car, he was completely engulfed in fire.
When you got out of your car, Don, I was standing down there, I live down there, and you said, where's Don Gay? And I pointed at the car right about this point, and you started to run to it.
My main concern is the man was still in the car, and all I could think about is, by God, let's get him out.
And then a fire bottle exploded.
Blew the fire bottles off the car is what happened. And the safety safari did just a great job, and I jumped in to try and lend a hand to do what I could do for Don Gay Jr.
Well, you were dressed appropriately, obviously. Still had all your driving gear on, and you were a great big help in getting that young man out of that car, into the ambulance, later into a helicopter, and he is making a full recovery. In fact, the very next day, we got this video at the hospital. A little worse for wear, but all in all, he was in pretty good spirits and very grateful to even be talking. The 1989 California Nationals, Gene Snow, Fort Worth, Texas, far lane.
And something fell off the front of the car and came back and blew a tire out is what happened, Steve, and it made a tremendous right-hand turn into the guardrail.
Knocked him out. Absolutely. He was unconscious at this point, and that's just as well because he didn't see the conclusion to the slide right into the tire-wrapped telephone pole. Gene was pretty badly banged up and suffered a broken collarbone, but was back in competition in just a few races. Now, this is the same event at Sears Point. I mean, this kind of thing continued on and on and on. Joe Amato blows that crankshaft out the bottom of the engine. An incredible fire that Don comes back into the driver's compartment.
That's something you don't see that often, Steve. So much fire. It came into the cockpit with him and actually burned his fire suit.
So he was much like a funny car driver, anxious to get the thing stopped.
And that's the reason the engine's supposed to be behind you and blew the crankshaft right out of the engine.
He left this at the far end of the souvenir for us. Gary Ormsby, who was so dominant in '89, came into his home track, Sears Point, with a good points lead and had a big advantage over Jim Head.
And broke a wing strut. The wing actually came forward and lost all downforce on the rear of the car, and it just flew.
Ormsby tucked down as tight as he could get into that roll cage. Nothing separating his helmet from the pavement but a thin piece of tubing. Gary Ormsby was okay, and we talked.
Steve, I didn't know what had happened. It just took a big turn on me, and I didn't have any idea what happened.
It happened so fast, there's nothing you could do?
No, there was nothing I could do. Next thing I was upside down, and I was just trying to stay in the car, keep my hands inside the car. It wasn't the thing I could do when I got upside down.
Now, Lee Beard and the crew for Gary Ormsby did not have time to repair that car. They spent $30,000 on a brand new car, went to Brainerd, Minnesota, and trashed in.
It was in a power wheel stand. He was out of control at that point, Steve. The car just went off to the left, hit that guardrail, came over to the right, as you can see. Fortunately, he's okay.
2 races, 2 cars down the drain, but still in the points lead. Ormsby went back to his shop, got one of his older cars, took it to the U.S. Nationals, and then on to Maple Grove Raceway, where he and you and I, Don Prudhomme, saw an incredible day of 4-second performance.
How about this one, Steve? Joe Amato, Shirley Muldowney. We're going to watch the first side-by-side 4-second run.
That's right, and it's never happened before, and this place went wild. Shirley Muldowney didn't win, but she was so happy to have been part of the moment, you'd have thought she did. Joe Amato, of course, was a bit happy. Joe Amato, the first ever side-by-side 4s, and you, fortunately for you, were on the winning end of it.
Steve, it's a pleasure. And the 496, that's the record. Because we have a 5.0 Platt to back it up, so that's 200 points if we can hold it. But, you know, to run Shirley and her run 97, 96, that's history.
It's a race that will never be forgotten.
I know. I'm glad to be there.
We were all glad to be at Maple Grove on that day to see Bob Glidden notch his 75th Pro Stock event title. You heard right, 75. No one will ever come close to that in the ranks of drag racing. Next closest is my man at my left here, Don Prudhomme, with 40 of them.
That's right, Steve. I can't imagine 75.
Look at that. My goodness gracious. 75 diamonds, Steve.
I'd have had my pocket knife out by now if somebody gave me a plaque with 75 diamonds on it. All right, we move on to the 89 Jeep Nationals. Frank Bradley against Gary Ormsby, soon to be crowned the Winston champ. Ormsby fired a shot heard round the sport, Don.
491, Steve. How about that?
That's great. I knew it was a good run. I didn't know how good, but I knew she was awful good. Left really hard, set me back in the seat, and pulled right on down through here.
Ormsby won at Texas that day and bagged the speed record at 294. On to the Pro Nationals, Phoenix, Arizona. Joining Gary Ormsby is a Winston champ funny car racer, Bruce Larson, who led from day one when he first beat Kenny Bernstein in Pomona. And another magic moment at the Falls. Shirley Muldowney won her first national event since returning to drag racing in 1986.
And what a proud moment for Shirley. Ron Tober, all the crew. Congratulations.
Oh, absolutely. This was one of the most popular wins of the decade. And you know, Don, every year we say, well, we can't top that year. And every year we do.
We keep doing it, don't we, Steve?
Don, thanks for joining us again and bringing your unique perspective and insight into our look at the decade of the 80s.
My pleasure, Steve. But you know, from my experience, the 1980s will look calm compared to the 1990s.
I couldn't agree more. And thank you for joining us. We'll see you at the drags.